Salesforce can be great, but it doesn't always let you do what you want it to do. So sometimes you need to bring it from Salesforce into something like Google Sheets to do what you need. So let me show you how to automatically sync reports from Salesforce into Google Sheets and how to make it to automatically refresh. So the first thing we're going to do is go to Extensions, Add-ons, Get Add-on, and we're going to search Salesforce Connector. It's this one right here. We'll click on that and hit Install. And after you authorize it, you'll see under your extensions, it says Salesforce Connector, and you'll click Open. Now, the first time you do this, you'll need to sync it with your Salesforce account. But if you've already done that, you can simply click on Reports and find different ones that you've done. So over here in Salesforce, I have an Opportunity Report, and I have a Accounts Report. Now, the goal here is to be able to sync both of these reports to Salesforce automatically. And I want them to automatically update so that way I can see at all times what stages the accounts are in. So for example, I'm going to go ahead and click on the account prospect right here, import into ActiveSheet. If you don't see it right here, you can simply search all reports there. I don't really recommend it if you work for a giant organization that has a ton of reports. Instead, what I usually do is I go into Salesforce, I look at the report, and then after I look at the report, it will pop back in here and it will be under that recently run reports. So I'm going to go ahead and do Insert into ActiveSheet and get data. One thing to note is it will replace everything in this sheet. So I'm going to go ahead and click Replace. Now this is important to know because if you do calculations based off of this data, if you sync it in there again, then it's going to overwrite all of your calculations. So instead of creating calculations based off of this data inside this sheet, I usually create a separate tab and call it Data Full or something like that and do my calculations there. You can see up here in the top right corner, there's a little black triangle. If you hover over that, it will show you what report it's synced to, and then the field that's correlated with that column from the report in Salesforce. So if you ever have a question on where this data is coming from, look for that, and you can see exactly what report it's coming from. Set up an automatic refresh. You can click on Refresh. And if you want to refresh it one time, you can simply click Refresh, but to create an automatic refresh, you'll click Create. Select the sheet that you want to do, as well as the refresh hours. You can do 4, 8, or 24. I usually do 4 and hit Create. So now every 4 hours, it's going to refresh. And if there's anything new that's added or taken away from that report, it will be reflected here automatically. Now, one thing to know is that you can't have multiple reports refreshing in the same spreadsheet. So if this is the case, which happens all the time, what you'll do is you'll go to New Spreadsheet. In this new spreadsheet, this is where you're going to set up the automatic refresh, and then we'll bridge those together. So we'll go to Extensions, Salesforce Connector, click to enable the add-on. Once you do that, you'll be able to open it just like we did before. And now we can go to Reports, and let's say this time I want to run the Opportunity Close Date 8/31/25. I'll import that into the active sheet and replace it. All right, and now since it's in a different report, we can go ahead and create that auto refresh. So I'll put it for sheet 1 every 4 hours and hit Create. So on this spreadsheet, we have our opportunities refreshing automatically. And then on this spreadsheet, we have our accounts refreshing automatically. But how do we get them together? Let me show you how to do that. So we'll create a new tab, and we're going to use the import range formula. And if you don't know import range, make sure to check out my video on import range. It's super beneficial for you to know. So we'll type in equals import range. Now we need the spreadsheet of the other report. We'll put that inside quotes, put a comma. Then inside quotes, we're going to put the tab. So this was sheet 1, exclamation point. And then we need the columns that we want. So we can do A through G. So I'll do A through G. And then I'll end the quote and press enter. It needs to allow access so that way it can run. And now you can see that we have all of the opportunity information in the same spreadsheet now as the account information. All right, so now one thing to know is that this is bringing in every single cell, whether it has data in there or not. So if I type something here, it's going to block this from executing because there's something that's blocking it, so it doesn't have enough room to expand. So this can get really cumbersome if you have a lot of different imports happening. So what I usually do is I wrap this in a query formula. So we can do query, open parentheses, and at the end of that, we'll say select star, which is select all, where call 1 is not null. And once I press enter, it's only going to bring in the data if column 1, which is column A, is not null, meaning it's not blank. So if it has data, it will bring it in. So now if I type in test down here, it won't block because there is nothing that's trying to execute in there because we're only trying to bring in those few rows. Now with import range, there are limitations. You can only do so many cells before it crashes on you. So if you have giant reports that you're working with, sometimes you may need to simplify the one that you're actually bringing in. I usually recommend syncing to the main spreadsheet the report that has the most values because that will update automatically. But if you have two spreadsheets that have a ton of values, you might need to simplify the one before bringing it in. Now let's say that we only want to include opportunities where the amount is greater or equal to 2,000. So that way it helps minimize the amount that we're bringing over. Over here in the spreadsheet that we're syncing the opportunities to, what I'll do is I'll create a new spreadsheet and then I'll type equals query. Then I'll select the auto sync data range, put a comma, and inside quotes say select star. Now when you do that, it's going to bring over everything. So now we can do different clauses. And this is kind of like simplified SQL. So if you haven't seen my query video, make sure to go back and watch that after this. It's a great thing to know how to do. Also do this with filter and different things like that. This just makes it a little bit easier. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to say where D is greater than or equal to 2,000. And now it's only going to show me the ones that meet that criteria. So you can do this with the amounts, you can do this with the close date, you can do this with the stages, really whatever you want to do, you can do this type of filtering. So now instead of bringing in all the data, we're only going to bring in the data that we actually care about for this assignment. So now over here, we still have the information coming from sheet 1, but I can go inside the formula and instead of sheet 1, I'm going to type in sheet 2, or you can type in whatever you want. And now it's going to sync to that other tab that has a simplified version. So this is a great workaround when it comes to trying to get a bunch of different reports into one and have them automatically sync so you can do a bunch of different calculations. Now, if you want to get a little fancy and be able to dynamically adjust that filter that you created, so instead of having 2,000, let's say you want to have 1,500 instead, for example. But you don't want to have to go back and forth between spreadsheets. I don't blame you. Let me show you a secret hack that you can do to do this. So over here in a cell that I designate, I'm going to put 2,000. Back over on the opportunities Salesforce sync, I'll type equals import range. And then we need that spreadsheet. So I'm going to copy the URL, paste the URL, and then I'm going to simply bring in that one singular cell. So in this case, it's J1 from sheet 3. So inside quotes, I'll type in sheet 3, exclamation point, J1, in the quote. So now, after I allow it, you'll be able to see that it says 2,000. So now in my formula, instead of having 2,000 built in fixed, I'm going to end the quote, put an ampersand, select the cell, put an ampersand, and then start back the quote. And once I do that, everything is the same. But if I change this on the other spreadsheet to 1,500, for example, you can see that now we have 1,500 populating as well. And that's because when I change this amount on the main spreadsheet, it automatically changed the amount on this spreadsheet. And then with that lower threshold, another one is being able to be qualified. So that's a few things that you can do to be able to sync different spreadsheets together, make them a little bit more dynamic, and bring everything into one place to do calculations, combine, and all of that. One thing that's super, super important is you have to have a way to link them together. So for example, I need an account ID. That's really the best way, the account ID, opportunity IDs, and things like that. If you have the account name, you can do that as well. But basically you need to have something that is a unique ID. So that way you can link them together with the different spreadsheets. So for example, we have the account ID here. We have the account ID here. So if I wanted to be able to see what stage in the amount that each of those accounts were in, but over here, one, I wouldn't do it on this spreadsheet because this one's an auto sync like I mentioned before. So I'm going to create a new tab, call it combined. And then I'll do that query just like I did before. So I'm going to select query, go to A through E, and then simply put select star where A is not null. And now I have this on a combined tab. So now I can do whatever I want. So I'm going to say stage, and I'll type equals X lookup. And I'm going to look up this account ID over here. And my lookup range will be the account ID. My return range will be the stage. So now I can see that the stage is qualification. If I go down, I'll see that I have an NA error for Crooked Cola, and that's because that doesn't qualify with that $1,500 threshold. Now, if I change this back down to 0, for example, now we'd see that negotiation's in there. Now, using XLOOKUP and different things like that is a whole video in itself, but this is how to sync Salesforce with Google Sheets and to be able to create multiple automatic updates for different reports, but bring them all into one spreadsheet. Hope this video helps. Like and comment for more.